Move on to the next big story of the day, and it is official. The House has now passed the president's big, beautiful agenda. It now heads to the Senate, and then if all goes as planned, it will then head to the president's desk. Now, many have said once completed, this will define the president's legacy. What say you, sir?
Yes, every presidency in its beginning or the honeymoon period usually takes on a big, bold initiative. In the case of President Obama, it was the Affordable Care Act. In the case of President Biden, it was the clean energy transition and certain civil rights measures. In this case, with President Trump, it's the big, beautiful bill, which is not just fiscal, but also promotes many of the campaign positions that he took in his successful run for his second presidency. It does have to go to the Senate. I think certain provisions are up for grabs. It's not going to be the same bill when it comes out of the Senate. One of the areas that I focus on, as you know, is energy. And I think the pulling back of tax credits for certain projects that were voted on bipartisan and invested in bipartisan may in fact be a challenge. There's also the issue regarding state and local taxes. I live in California. We're a SALT state. There will be close observation. And then that third rail is Medicare and Medicaid. And will these adjustments affect those that that legislation, those laws were protecting or designed to protect? And I think, as Speaker Jeffries points out, oftentimes Medicare and Medicaid, Social Security are looked upon as entitlements, but in fact, these are funds that Americans pay into. And when you start reducing those who have access, particularly those in need, that will be a controversy when this bill attempts to reconcile.
It was very interesting. The president stated to his party, do not, and I repeat, do not touch Medicaid. It's going to be interesting to see if that will be the case once it makes its way now to the Senate. Let's revert back to yesterday, Timothy, with regard to the South African president paying a visit to the White House. We now know that he is being praised for, in so many words, staying calm during Trump's Oval Office ambush. And I will repeat the word ambush. What did you think about that encounter?
Well, it was kind of like Zelensky Part 2. It was very theatric, and clearly President Trump was messaging to a certain portion of its base, and the grievance, those feeling that white people are under excessive attack, largely due to what has been called identity politics or cultural wars, is a growing feeling in the United States, in Europe, feeding many of the white nationalist or white nationalist Christian movements. With that being said, the fact that President Ramaphosa brought Ernie Els and other certain white South Africans to try to refute the president's claim, I believe was powerful, and he should be commended for maintaining his calm. Also beyond this is the position that South Africa has taken with certain adversaries of the United States. And that history goes back to Nelson Mandela and the African National Congress known as the ANC. They have aligned with those world powers that they feel supported their liberation in the southern region of Africa. And this oftentimes rubs against the grain of how America has viewed African nations, and I would say almost in a neo-colonial fashion. So I think this was more than just the allegations of genocide on white South African farmers. It's actually a larger discussion of the United States' tenuous relationship with South Africa.
It was very interesting. The South African president, to your point, stating or making mention of Nelson Mandela many a times, stating that because of him, well, they will follow the road of peace and know how to go about it with regard to getting peace. I found that to be very interesting. We'll end with this, Timothy, and that is the new book that's surrounding former President Joe Biden. We now know that Democrats were, in essence, shocked at Biden's decline, but stayed quiet. To one point, one staffer stated that the president said, hey, what are we doing here? What do you think about that, if that's actually the case?
Well, this isn't the first time that a president's mental acuity or mental health has been kept from the public. Our presidents tend to be elder statesmen. older, with the exception of possibly Bill Clinton and John F. Kennedy. Hence, they are subject to some of the mental decline that we all will face probably at some time in our lives. With that being said, it should not be a shock. The American people, the Saturday Night Live skits, the comedians were all referencing the decline of President Biden. And it's tragic, in my opinion, that the Democratic Party, at a time when it could be the counterbalance to the far right in the Republican Party, are now again mired in their own missteps and not being transparent with the American people on President Biden's mental condition.
Yeah.
It's tragic, and it's going to take a lot of spin to climb out of this hole.
It leaves one to wonder if he was fully transparent with regard to when he found out about his cancer diagnosis. Yet again,
Yes.
Perhaps we will never know. Timothy Alain Simon, political strategist, joining us right here on the Live Zone. Always good to see you, sir. Thank you so much for your time.
Great to see you. Thank you, guys.
All right.